tonight. We've got questions from people on Facebook and our Patreon supporters.
So yeah, and we're happy to take questions from viewers as well.
And as a reminder, please follow us on Facebook and like us and subscribe to us on YouTube. Yeah, and that's actually very helpful. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, and to subscribe to our channel and feel free to comment below, because the chat that we have here doesn't appear on the actual videos too. So feel free to go in and leave comments there.
Yeah, yeah. But while this is happening live, you can leave questions, and we should be able to see those over here on the side. So we'll see how that goes. But we do have a little queue of questions here. So.
And hi, we've already got people joining us.
Yeah.
And we should also mention too that we've started a new thing on YouTube. So we've got some videos that Matt Baxter has done for us, and one of them is about a recent photograph that came out. Well, supposedly a new one of the Beast of Bray Road. So I won't spoil it. I'll let you watch it. And also another video analysis of a weird photograph. I don't know if you've seen it yet, Blake, because you're not online at the moment. You're not on social media.
Is it blowing up the interwebs? I'm excited to hear about it. So
yeah, it kind of is. But a girl at a party, and she's kind of holding a bottle and a glass or something and dancing, but it looks like there's something kind of wrapped around her waist like a claw. So it's kind of a creepy picture. We should be showing it up now, but
not like a belt. You mean like specifically like a claw? Yeah.
Not hair or a belt or anything like that. I mean, just something supernatural.
And so, what's the premise? Satan's holding her pants up. Is that the idea?
Well, lots of different theories that it's something paranormal. It's an animal, or a creature, or a thing, a ghost, whatever. Everyone's got their own idea. I mean, lots of skeptical perspectives too, but we just thought we'd start some new videos because there's always something out. Every other day there's a new video of a ghost or a demon or something. So we thought, let's start up a channel, well, part of the MonsterTalk channel, so that we can just analyze these. So please, anyone watching or anyone listening to this, do send in any photographs and videos that you've got too, so that we can analyze and take a look at them.
I'm not a fan of paranormal belts, by the way. I prefer suspenders of disbelief.
That's leading right into one of our early questions too.
That's true. You want to start with that one?
We can. Yeah, let's do that. So I don't know who submitted this question, but
someone asked. Not my wife.
No, not Kathleen. Do each of you have a favorite pun that Blake has spewed from your past years? So spewed, I think, says it all.
Well, it kind of does, doesn't it? Well, that's not nice.
Uttered then.
I don't even know. I mean, honestly, do you even like my puns? I assume you don't. I assume everyone
does. Don't encourage him.
A favorite. Yeah, that's yeah. What's your favorite? What's your favorite pimple?
Or for you, it's like which of your children is your favorite?
Well, there's
you just
that
can't
too.
Answer that question.
That's true. Do any of them stick in your mind at all? So.
You're putting me on the spot.
Well, no, because your defenses come up and then you just sort of wipe them away. I can tell you the one, like I think we've talked about it. Like generally speaking, when we're doing these shows, these happen organically. And there's only been one time when I prepared a joke ahead of time, and that was when we were doing the interview with the cast of the $10 million Bigfoot show, and one of the co-hosts was Dean Cain, who played Superman on TV, and the other two hosts it was Natalia Reagan and Todd Distel. Yeah, and they were on the show. And ahead of time, I thought of this idea. I was like to ask if Dean Cain was bothered by the night shoots on the show. And they were like, yeah, he was. And I was like, because I'd always heard he was afraid of cryptid nights. And that was I guess my favorite one, but I didn't get to do it organically. I came up with it like 2 or 3 hours before the show. So.
Which I think has happened before, but I mean, you always come up with a witty, punny title for every episode.
Oh, yeah. My favorite title is when we did the one on homunculus or homunculi.
Oh.
And I did Onan the Jar Burying, which is, you'd have to know that, that onanism is masturbation, and that part of the creation process
read
of
the Bible.
homunculus. Yeah, you have to read the Bible. You'd have to know that homunculi were created through part of the process was masturbation, and that Onan the Barbarian is a nice pun on Conan the Barbarian. So that's there's a lot of stuff that goes into these really This is important stuff, you know. So.
But that is the great thing about them. They're witty. They're clever. You know, they're not just based on an idiom or something. I mean, you are gifted.
I'm afflicted is what I am. So.
Depends on how you look at it.
So we've got a question from Andy Michaels about what inspired us to start MonsterTalk. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about that before on the show. We
have a couple of times, but I think it's fine to revisit that. But it's really, MonsterTalk is your baby, and this was something you came up with. And we met at Dragon Con back in 2008 now.
Yeah.
It seems like it was just yesterday, really.
Exactly.
Years ago.
Time flies.
But it was absolutely your idea. So what inspired you?
Well, I was partially inspired by the podcast Skepticality. Hello, Derek and Swoopy. And I learned about how it worked. I'm a tech guy. I've been doing IT support for years and years and working with technology and programming and all kinds of stuff. But it seemed very achievable to produce a show. And I wanted to do something that was, I don't want to say niche. I mean, I just wanted to talk about, really, I guess the whole thing comes out of the fact that I had been doing my own investigations for more than a decade and doing nothing with that information. I had solved this, that, and the other and explored this, that, and the other, and really had never talked about it publicly. But the idea of taking that work and looking at these ideas and in a very skeptical way seemed like something nobody else was doing. So it seemed like there was a spot. And then we had the technology and we had the talent and the expertise. So why not, right? So.
Oh, yeah. And I think too, as you were saying, you had shows like Skepticality and Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. So all of these shows that were more generalized.
They are very generalized, right? Yeah.
About skepticism in general and tools of skepticism and interviewing people who are across the field of all different fields of skepticism. But yeah, I think it was a good idea to go with something that was more niche. But at the same time, we've had a broad definition of what a monster is, and therefore we've been able to just talk about anything of interest. And I mean, certainly, I think I've often said that when we started, we had a few people who said, just how many episodes can you do on Bigfoot? This is going to get pretty boring, guys. But I mean, we have done lots of episodes on Bigfoot. He's one of the key cryptids, absolutely. But we've treated so many other animals and legendary creatures. And to this day, we're still getting lots of suggestions and ideas and always coming up with new themes ourselves. And certainly not done. We could easily do this for another 10 years and another 10 years.
I think one of the things is, well, there's a couple of things. One, we have a very friendly approach because we come from a more accepting, believing background. And I think we are friendly and we understand people experience weird things. Like we don't start from the position of that never happened because that's not real, right? But I think we're very curious people. We want to know, why do people experience stuff like this? Even if it doesn't fit into our materialist paradigm, why do people keep reporting weird things? And I think that's never going to stop being an interesting question because people are never going to stop experiencing the bizarre, the weird, the strange.
Absolutely. And I think taking the approach that we do too, of being interested in the folklore and just loving the stories and repeating the stories and looking at other people's experiences too makes it a humanizing show. You know,
it does. And I would say over the 10 years, our perspectives have changed and our knowledge has increased, and we're likely to continue to change. And I often keep thinking of the story about the blind people exploring an elephant and how they get different perspectives because they're all seeing a different part of it. And the more I look into psychology, neurology, folklore, science, religion, all these different approaches to the same topics, I see everybody seeing different things and trying to come up with a synergistic approach that encompasses as much as we can of all those different disciplines, I think is helpful. Even if we can't deep dive and solve the problem, we're at least we're exposing our listeners to a lot of different ways of looking at these topics.
Oh yeah, and I think it's great that we've been able to always find experts. I mean, no matter what the topic is, no matter how specific is, there's someone out there who's studied this and written a book about it, who has worked on this question for 10, 20 years and can just bring a lot of knowledge to the show. So
yeah, I was going to say, if I had any advice for an upcoming podcaster, schedule guests who are lecturing professors, because they never run out of things to say.
yeah, they just keep talking. But we did have one question, someone asking about the Monster House Presents introduction.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't quite sound like me. Isn't that some kind of AI British voice?
It's not AI. I actually hired a British actress to read that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't know that.
yeah. There's I think it's called Fiverr. Maybe it's got 2 V's or 3 R's, or you know how all these internet sites are. But Fiverr is a place where you can hire actors.
Oh, Fiverr.
Yeah,
it's fiber. Like
it's a high fiber diet. It helps
Fiverr.
create a movement. Yes, and it also creates British female text voice. It's great. It's great. So no, Fiverr. I hired an actress to read it, and she gave me a whole bunch of different takes. I used the one that was more newsy. I kind of like the sexy one though, but I'm not going to use that. It's like
maybe for a different show.
So ASMR or whatever. So it's good stuff.
So yeah, we have another question. Unless there's anything else you wanted to say about starting.
No. I think that's a good coverage. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have talked about it here and there.
Oh, I should say we also at the time that we started the show, Monster Quest was a popular TV show, and that also I gave us something to push again. It was our kite string, if you will. So
yeah. So this question, and I don't know who sent us this question. I think it was from Facebook. Have you ever been scared on an investigation?
I'm easily frightened. So I'm frequently scared just going to the basement at night. So yeah, sure, yeah.
Well, I guess there are several different ways to look at that. Scared in the sense of thinking that there's a ghost or something paranormal that could just leap out at you and hurt you. And then I think there's also the idea that some investigations can be dangerous. I think over the years, you and I have spoken and written about some groups of investigators who do silly things on their investigations. They might go somewhere to investigate a haunted train, and they go hanging around the railroad tracks, and that can be an extremely dangerous thing to do, or to go into maybe abandoned houses that might not be very safe. So I think there are lots of different ways to look at something being scary.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned to you before that, like, when I was a teenager, my dad, his business was tearing down old houses. So he would recycle the material and make it into flooring and various other things for new houses. And so I spent a lot of time in old homes, frequently tearing them apart and finding really interesting things in that process.
Little red rooms and things like that.
Yeah, and for example, I found a mummified cat's old shoes and bottles with doodads in them that I later discovered were common anti-witch protection. But I didn't know it at the time, or I would have kept them. We just were curious as to how the cats and shoes got into the walls, because there's slats and plaster. But now I know. I do regret that I didn't get to keep some of that stuff. But we did find lots of interesting things. But I spent a lot of time in really old homes doing things far worse than what they do to provoke demons on TV shows. And so I never saw anything weird there. Yeah.
Poking them.
Yeah. But I mean, provoke them. I'm tearing their home down. Come on. So
yeah.
As I've been, not an investigation, but I had like this. Oh, you froze up. Oh no.
Sorry.
Are you okay?
I don't know if
I'm gonna hide you, bring you back. Let's see if that works.
Okay.
There, you're back now. For just a minute there, it was like you were frozen with a stroke or something. I'm glad you're back.
And that's funny, because that's what I was saying about you. So I wasn't sure if it was you or if it was me.
I may have had a stroke, but no.
So you had me thinking about just a weird little experience just came to mind, talking about finding the mummified cat. When I grew up in Australia, just as a kid, the family home that we had this kind of, I don't know, like an alcove that would lead under the house. And we didn't really store anything there. I mean, it was just full of spiders as Australia is, and so we didn't keep anything there. It was just kind of dirt and just the underside of the house. But at one point, I found a plastic bag and opened it up, and there was this really strange kind of like a I don't even know how to describe it. It was like a fabric arrow, but it was stuck with all of these kind of buttons and was wrapped around a candle. And so there are all of these weird things. And, you know, we don't have a lot of the things in Australia that you have here. If I grew up around here and found something like that, I'd think it was a Santeria spell or, you know.
Or a failed Etsy business.
Yeah, well, this was well before the days of Etsy. But it just seemed like it was some kind of, I don't know, someone had attempted to put a curse on us. I don't know why this thing would have been there when it wasn't there earlier. It wasn't like it was covered in dust and dirt. So it had obviously only been there for a short period of time, but it was just a really strange object to find under the house. So I don't know who put it there, if it was a gag by someone at school or what, but it was just a strange thing to find in the house.
That is
under the
strange.
house.
Yeah. I don't know. That is really weird. And you said there was an alcove that led to this?
Well, it was just an entrance to the underside of the house. So
Gotcha.
I don't really know what you'd call it here, but you know, it just led under the house, and you know, it wasn't terribly large, just a couple of feet by a couple of feet. So it wasn't something you'd have to squat to climb under the house, and I don't really know what it was for. If it was maybe for builders or anyone to do repairs on the house, but yeah, it was like someone had thrown it in there. I don't think they'd actually climbed through and dropped it off. I think they just turned up.
You might be doing a service right now, and that someone's been, where did I put that? Oh, you know,
can have it back.
Internet, so.
Well, yeah, I think I was a bit creeped out at the time.
Yeah.
And I've heard of when I wrote God Bless America, I was writing about some of the weird things that had been found around the Denver area. For example, there was a cornfield where someone found a cow's tongue that had been wrapped up in string and had some kind of spell written in Spanish. And so, you know, people do things like that here. You know, I don't know how much that sort of thing is done in Georgia, but there are certainly people who practice, you know, doing these kinds of things, folk magic at home, hoodoo. You know, it's.
I think with a cow, that's moodoo.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's my favorite pun. But yeah, it's not the kind of thing that happens in suburban Sydney, you know,
right,
20 years ago or more. This is a weird thing, but yeah, so any scary investigations? So aside
not
from
really, I mean, I get, you know, for me, just because of the nature of my life, a lot of my investigations are historical. So it's a lot of times it's going to the library, which is never scary to me. Reading old articles, reading old books, you know, so not so much. But I have done, you know, I've gone to cemeteries and old houses and tried things out based on folklore to see what happens, and so far nothing. But no, not really scary. No. I'm much more likely to give myself the heebie-jeebies than I am to be scared by an investigation. So,
which, you know, can be part of the fun. Certainly is for a lot of people who do this kind of thing. But
sure,
I think in terms of frightening people, scary people, I've had experiences like that. And so, like you, I do a lot of investigations just solo. But then when I met Matt, I started tagging along with him for investigations that he was doing. And years ago, it was before Blade was born, we were contacted by a woman in Greeley. So it's kind of rural Colorado on the outskirts of town, maybe about 2-3 hours from Denver. And this woman was claiming that all kinds of things were happening to her, that she was being attacked, or specifically being raped by demons, and that she had worms coming out of her skin. And so anyway, she was communicating with us for a while and telling us about all of these strange things that were happening in her house. And then at one point she sent Matt a text and said 911, you know, I need help right now. And so I was kind of freaked out about this. And with all the stories that we were hearing, I thought, this seems like there's something dangerous going on here, and I don't want to just turn up and get involved, because you do deal with a lot of people who just, suffering mental illness, lots of problems, with the people who believe that something's going on in their home, and, or they think that you're going to turn up with a camera crew, that you're part of a TV show, reality TV show, or something like that. And so, she sent this 911 text. And so I said to Matt, well, he was eager to hop in the car and go out there, and I wasn't. So we actually called the cops on them, which they did not like very much.
The cops or the victim?
Well, the victim didn't like having the cops called on. They didn't answer the door.
Oh, really?
And felt like someone had kind of ratted on them. But with the extreme things that they were saying were happening, I mean, here we're talking about rape, and there were children in the house. So, I thought first port of call is to...
We're about to get a cameo, apparently.
Okay.
Is there something you need? Hey, you just want to be on TV?
I need you.
Oh, you're sweet. Okay. Okay.
Can you see how you're a mermaid?
What mermaid?
Your Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh, she looks like we're live on the internet. Go away, lady.
We will talk about mermaids soon, though.
We will be getting to mermaids. I love you.
I thought something was terribly wrong there for a second. Yeah, that's the first time she's ever done it. Yes. Terribly right. So we, I didn't want to just turn up there, and I certainly thought, look, if you've got kids in the household or teenagers, and if someone's getting raped, let's send the cops out there first. But they were pretty upset about that. But it was maybe about 2 weeks later that they texted us again and said, we understand why you did what you did, and you were just looking out for us. That was a genuine and valid thing to do. But we'd still like you to come out, because we've got all of these crazy things going on in the house. So we went out there, and it just seemed to me, ultimately, just to cut a very long story short, this woman was a meth addict.
Whoa.
And she was on a number of other medications as well, illicit drugs, all kinds of things. And having
demon possession?
Well, she wanted to show me this video of her being raped by this demon. And so she wouldn't show it to Matt. She didn't want her kids to see it. She just wanted me to see it. And it was her maybe spending about 15 minutes fumbling around on the computer trying to find something, couldn't find anything. It just seemed to me like they really wanted a lot of attention, and there were just a lot of problems in the home.
Yeah.
We went into the children's rooms, and one of the kids, 14-year-old, had this huge barrel full of empty bottles of alcohol. So just the little cheap ones you get of gin or vodka. The kind of one you have. Yeah, sitting on the sidewalk when Kathleen kicks you out. Yeah. So, the place was just, it absolutely reeked of pot. But, this is Colorado too.
Sure.
But, there were just a lot of problems in the household. But I was genuinely scared to be in the home of these people, because they were, there was absolutely something wrong with all of them. And the wife in particular was just freaked out. She had big black circles under her eyes, and she obviously hadn't slept in days, and she was really manic. And
that all sounds pretty scary. It really does.
It was, and I think just over the years, accompanying Matt on investigations has been the scariest thing, because you're dealing with the public, people who believe in the paranormal, and who want you to come into their home to see all of the crazy things that are happening in their homes. And just a lot of them are not terribly balanced.
Well, we talked about that a little bit on the Gyra Ghost case. Even back then, it seemed like the idea that, and of course, there's always the stereotype of I've had a weird thing happen to me, and people goes, well, and that's not, that's usually not the case. So when you run into that, it's you really need to either have a really great training or know to step back and not engage.
And that's the thing. None of us have training.
Right.
People like you and I, that we're safe. We could go into someone's home, even though no one really should. We could go into someone's home and we could sit down with them, and this is what we've always done, to say, tell us about your experiences, and then to, often to urge them to start a diary or something like that, so they can record their experiences. but to also go through all of the phenomena and to not say, oh, this is what it is, but to say, here's a possible explanation, a natural explanation for something that's going on in the house, something to do with the plumbing, or it could be, animals outside, but to give them something so that they're not scared, if they are genuinely scared.
I mean, I have to say that my favorite thing about doing this show, while I hope we're helping people learn critical thinking skills, and I hope we're helping people not be afraid of the world in general. A lot of these stories have really mundane explanations, but the people who have written saying that we helped solve a problem that's been plaguing them for years. Like, we've helped them understand, especially around sleep paralysis, where people have had, they've learned about sleep paralysis. They've realized that feeling of something pressing on them and being immobile wasn't an alien invasion. It wasn't a ghost attack. It wasn't demonic. It's just a natural thing, a scary thing, but a natural thing that can happen to somebody. And that's happened a lot, and it's made me feel really happy that we've been able to help people. So,
well, yeah. I mean, that's absolutely, I think, one of the perks of doing this, to be in contact with people and to be able to help. But some people really, we shouldn't be going into their homes, and we shouldn't be getting involved in personal problems. I mean, I've encountered all different kinds of things. Matters went through a period of a couple of years where he was harassed by one woman whose home he went into. She was having problems with her husband, and she just really lent on him way too much and was contacting him, every day and phoning him and inappropriate hours. And, so you get people who start relying on you and coming to you for everything in their lives. I mean, it's really something a lot of skeptical investigators don't see, because, we do historical research, we do research at a library, we do research on our computers, but once you start going into the homes of these people, you're seeing a totally different side of things.
True.
So
and
that's
also
my scary answer.
Yeah. Well, the one thing about it, though, if you do get the training to be able to do that work, it becomes billable. So that's nice. So
but it's really not, because again, what kind of training do we truly have? We can't ask for money from people. Some groups do, though. And then again, you do get a lot of people. I mean, I'm just astonished how many places we'd go to where people would say, well, where are your cameras? And where's the TV crew? And just thinking that they're going to be on TV, some reality TV show. And I think a lot of people are just have the wrong idea about this.
Like you're the first, the gateway to internet fame or TV fame.
But it's totally different to the skeptical work that I do.
Well, didn't we have a question about that? I think we did.
Popped up from one of the audience members.
Well, from the people who submitted from Facebook, I think. It was the question was, have we ever been approached to do our own TV show? That was from Anthony Points. And the answer is yes, sort of. We've had multiple producers reach out to us, talk to us about possibly producing a show. But every time, either A, nothing's come of it, or B, they wanted us to also it be the counterpoint to the belief, like a skeptic and a believer go have adventures. Yeah,
but they don't want us to be skeptical, because that doesn't
not really
make
skeptical.
good TV.
That's not good TV. But it's the X-Files. They want to basically have the X-Files format where they have
skeptic and believer.
Right. So
I think I've been approached. I think usually maybe once every 6 months or something. So not necessarily for MonsterTalk. I mean, you and I have even signed contracts, like options and things like that, and just nothing's come of it. But I think I've been contacted, for a bunch of shows and been on interviews and documentaries and things like that. But typically I think they're looking for a certain type of person, like they're looking for the stereotypes. An older man who is a skeptic, who can just say, no, this doesn't exist, to poo-poo it. But
I should actually make that part of my poo-poo on that. That's what I say. Poo-poo,
T-shirt or something. Poo, I say. So I think we're just too skeptical for television, and I think they're really wanting people who are believers, because that's what's fun for TV.
Looks like viewer Kathleen Smith wants to talk about our work talking to classrooms. And so actually, we just completed some of that with high schoolers, and I've done some stuff with middle schoolers, talking to them about monsters. And I think, in general, we've tried to keep the show as clean as possible. If it's explicit, we usually put that in the show notes and flag the episode. But
not so much for YouTube as well.
But no. On YouTube, on all these, if I push them out to the regular feed, I've got a disclaimer saying, we're not filtering this, we're not editing this. This is just what it is. So, but I do enjoy, especially our coverage around some particular famous mysteries, because I think that's a really educational way to say, well, here's the legend, here's what was reported, here's what actual historical records show. And generally speaking, it's surprising. A lot of the times we're able to come up with really good explanations, some of which existed at the time that the mysteries came out, but the explanations don't stick the way that the mysteries do. They're not as shared. So
well, I think doing that is always fun, because these these are always really bright kids and youths, and they're very interested in these topics. They find them fascinating, but they seem to have an almost natural ability to engage in critical thinking, and to look at things at multiple ways, and to try to solve or get to the problem of to the bottom of a mystery. I think certainly the older you get too, people can be a bit more fixed and rigid in their thinking, and conspiracy theorists and people who have certain beliefs about Bigfoot or psychics, and it's really difficult to change your mind the older that you get. So
in a very real sense, I think having good critical thinking skills, having that understanding of how to evaluate things for what's true and what's not true, arms you against all sorts of nonsense. It's probably not. Right. Yeah. Your whole life you're going to be faced with questions. Is this person lying to me? Is this person telling the truth? Is that claim true? Is the news telling me something that's true? Are they just selling soda? Do they not care what they're saying? And you may not be able to stop people from lying, but at least you can help just kind of figure out whether something's plausible or not. That's a really important skill set. So
yeah, absolutely. So that's always fun to do. We always enjoy doing that. But we've got more questions.
Ooh, can we do the one about trespassing?
Yeah, that's exactly where we're up to.
Oh, perfect. Okay, cool.
So Dave Oakes, have you ever been caught trespassing on an investigation? So do you want to start?
Sure. I don't know how good your story is, but
mine's weird, but
so I was interested in going into Oakland Cemetery, which is a big cemetery in Atlanta, and there's all kinds of legends around various graves and that sort of thing. But the problem was I worked a 9-to-5 job, and frequently worked earlier than 9 and later than 5, right? So, but in the summertime, the sun sets much later, and like now it's getting closer to 9 before it sets. But you wouldn't know it from my physique, but I was an avid jogger. I jogged over to Oakland, and the gate was locked. And I wanted to go in and take a look at some of particular graves. And it has a big, really beautiful stone fence all the way around like a wall. Like it's not a fence, it's a stone wall around the whole graveyard. And it was getting towards dusk, and I jumped over the wall. Like I sort of, it was a kind of a climb jump thing. And I got inside the cemetery to go look at a particular grave I wanted to go examine. And I can't do this voice adequately, but I heard this like mechanical voice saying, "Cemetery's closed, leave the cemetery." And, a second later, I was outside the cemetery. It's like, what was that? The guard was one of these people who had smoked enough that he had like the tracheal box.
Oh, right.
And he held like a vibrating thing up to his neck and told me to get out of the cemetery. Boy, it was effective.
Like the guy from South Park. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. It scared the poop out of me. So yeah. So I was immediately right. I was like, what? I was saying, what was that? But I was already outside. Like I fled. I fled.
Wow.
So yes, that was the case where I got caught trespassing.
That's a cool story. And I'm amazed I've never heard that one before, but I don't think you've heard my story either, have you?
Nope.
So I think this was maybe 2006 or 2007. And I was in Louisville, Kentucky, and it was for a conference or something at a university around there. And anyway, being in that area, and I guess we're going to talk about this a bit later too. You know, whenever I go somewhere, wherever I travel, I always like to look into local legends and ghost stories and things like that. So being there was very close to Waverly Hills Sanatorium, which around that time I think was probably the heyday of its fame and the height of its fame. Don't you think? Maybe. I mean, it's still
right. Yeah.
Continues to be of interest, and I'm not too sure what they're doing with the building nowadays. I know that the couple that owned it at the time were going to turn it into a hotel or something, or into like a haunted hotel. So I wanted to find out where this place was, and I couldn't find anything online at the time. So again, this goes back so far that you couldn't really get that kind of information. Now you can just go onto Wikipedia and find out exactly where it was. So I was traveling with a friend as well, and we, I don't know, went to a fast food joint or something, and ended up asking the teenagers there, you know, where's Waverly Hills? And that's always a great thing to do because the teenagers know, you know, the locations, the
Were they
haunted
in a
houses.
pizza shop outside, and there was a van like with a dog that talked?
Not quite. But so they said, oh yeah, you go near around Bobby Nichols golf course or something, and it's just behind there. And so we went off on this journey, and so it was a little bit of a drive from you know, the main city, but we got out there, and all these long winding roads, and leading up to the building too. It's a beautiful drive, and it's very majestic as you come upon the place and you see it. It's an enormous building, and at that point it was very dilapidated, really run down, but you could just still get a sense of the presence of the place and how huge it was. So anyway, we turned up, and there was a gate. It was just a kind of shabby little gate, and so we just pulled up our car and actually broke into the premises. So we kind of just got our way through the fence and got onto the property. And so we, started to walk towards the building, and we're having a look around the land, and we were still some distance from the building, but we saw this enormous red truck coming down the path. And so we thought, we better, go back to the car. And so anyway, he opened the car, the gate opened, and this car drove up, and it was this, I don't know, just very redneck-like guy, I guess, kind of trailer trash-like guy, missing a couple of teeth, and wearing, I guess, the equivalent of a MAGA hat at the time. That was this bright red hat, but it said Gooch on it. And his name was, surprisingly enough, Gooch.
Wow.
And so as soon as he heard me talking,
which is funny because when he looked in the mirror, he thought his name was Hakoog. But
exactly. And as soon as I started talking, he thought, oh, she's just this English girl. That's okay. This isn't someone who's trying to break into the premises so she can steal stuff or whatever. So we would just play dumb tourists, and he didn't threaten us or threaten to arrest us or anything like that. And we managed to just talk our way into getting free tickets to go to the ghost tour that they had that night.
Nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that
that
reminds me. I got caught before I got in. I went to the Gate to Hell in Stoll, Kansas, which is not really a real thing, but I mean, there's a cemetery there. But I got stopped by the sheriff before I even got started to go have a look. But we had a great conversation. We talked for like 45 minutes outside the graveyard. and I wrote a nice article about it. But I mean, his message was, it's an urban legend. It never happened. Please stop coming out here. And
Right.
I don't think they would care, except that people like literally take tombstones out of the graveyard to like as a souvenir. So which is horrific. But yeah.
Well, this building, I mean, there was nothing to really take anyway. They had somewhat of a museum downstairs. When we went back later that night and got a tour of the place, I mean, it was gutted at that point. It had seen worse days than that, but they'd cleared a lot of it out. So it was pretty much just this shell of a building. And then they had a section downstairs with a small museum of just little things like bottles and vials and things that had been left behind from the days when it was, not even always from the days when it was a sanatorium, but after that it had been a home for older people. So it had been a hospital for the entire history of the place, but it had just gone through several iterations. There's nothing to steal, but absolutely there was a lot of interest in the place at the time.
Well, it's nice they had a gift shop so everybody could have a vial experience.
Yeah,
So,
we did have a vial experience. Yeah. But that's my story. So I guess moving on,
sure.
Which is related to this. So Kerry Patterson from Facebook, what's your preferred method of solving paranormal claims? You talked a little bit about this already.
Yeah, we've talked about this so many times on the show, but it's a value. First of all, figure out what the story is. Break it down to see what the individual claims are. Go back and try to find primary sources. See if there was any. This is important. See if anybody's already solved the case. That's kind of like a big deal.
Yes, foundational thing.
Yeah. Turns out a lot of times you do a lot of work on this stuff and then whoops, somebody already did all this work. Yeah, that was a giant waste. I mean, it's still a wonderful way to spend your time investigating, but
you might find new angles or new information.
Yeah.
So it's worth doing, but certainly you need to see if anyone else has done something first.
Yeah, and I don't want to do too much on this right now, but like one of the things I just recently ran into was a case where one of the explanations talked about a particular concept. And we can talk about this off the air because I want to write something up about it. But
sure,
it turns out that it's one of those things where, everybody talks about that. And I thought, skepticism, you turn and say, wait a minute, everybody says X. Where does that come from? Is that valid? And you go back and look and you're like, oh no, this key concept is based on junk, And so, you got to question your premises all the time. But I think try to find individual elements to the claim. Don't try to think everything's a syndrome, like break it up into individual pieces and see if there's an explanation for each. Was it real? Is it possible that someone just made something up? It's tricky stuff.
Yeah, I think, my work is along the same lines as yours, doing more historical research. So I think you usually tend to do your research online first and going beyond Wikipedia, obviously, and trying to look at other sources, magazines, newspapers, things like that.
Yeah, for sure.
And then to go to the library if you can. And certainly if you're working on a local legend or you're in the town of the place that you're investigating, it's a lot easier to go to a local library or historical research center or something like that. But I think a big part of our work has been doing things on site. So going to places, not just doing armchair research, but actually going on site and, seeing if there's any hands-on research that you can do. I think that's really important.
Well, can we do this one over here? I don't know who asked it, but it says, what would be your dream investigation? That's a really interesting one because that's kind of related. Well, you go first if you don't mind.
I think I've always had a long list of places I'd like to go to, but I think my favorite place would have been Borley Rectory, which is in Essex in England.
Or was?
was there. It burnt down in part, I think, back in the 1930s, and then I think it was demolished in the 1940s. But I still think that there's a lot of work that can be done, not only from a historical perspective, but I'd certainly like to go to the site and check it out and talk with locals, go to the local library, do some research. I think that one has always captured my imagination and been really exciting for me. So I think that would be, one of my top 10 places.
Mine would probably be, I would love to try to recreate the Patterson-Gimlin film with the original equipment. There was so much discussion around that on the James Randi Educational Foundation boards back in the early 2000s. Even like up into like 2007, 2008, there were people who were like trying to recreate the costume and all this sort of thing.
And do you know exactly where the site is? Because I've been to Willow Creek and there were lots of different alleged sites which, were the spot. It seemed like no one knew exactly where it was. It seemed like there were lots of...
There was and it might have been on Monster Quest. My memory's not great, but there was somebody who found a really comparable site and did a 3D scan of the site with lasers and stuff. And I think that was Monster Quest, but if not, they were pretty confident that they had found the original location. My personal belief, and I apologize to Bill Mons, but we've had people like Bill who we've wanted to get on the show, and I've managed to not actually accomplish that. But there are people who've spent an absurd number of hours going over the film. But my personal belief is that the film is just grainy enough and blurry enough that it's become a Rorschach test, that basically people who want to see stuff there see it, and people who don't.
Absolutely.
There's a really famous, I think MK Davis did a stabilized version of it that you can get as an animated GIF file. And it looks, to me, it looks very much like a person in a suit walking across an open area outside a forest. But I think other people see an absolutely real animal with unexplainable musculature and that sort of thing. So I understand absolutely the inclination to want it to be real. I just I would like to recreate it. I'd really love to do that. Unfortunately, now to try to recreate with the original materials would be extremely expensive in a way that it wouldn't have been back then. So
absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And I think we've got a few more questions. So Jerry Drake, I'm assuming this is the Jerry Drake. And I think a few other people posted a question that was similar to this, a variant of this question. So of all the cryptids or paranormal phenomena out there, which do you think has the best chance of being real?
You want to go first?
I think my gut instinct is to say nothing, but that's not a terribly exciting response. I think maybe the thylacine. I mean, there are certainly people out there who believe that the thylacine can be recreated from DNA. And there are a number of people who have sightings. We can get into that in a minute too with another question that we have. But there are certainly people, intelligent people, who believe that the thylacine is still around and that they've seen an example. I just think it's a possibility. It's not like we're talking about Bigfoot or a creature that we can't guarantee its existence. I mean, this is a creature that certainly did exist at one point, and may possibly exist, but I mean, a very small probability.
Yeah. It's tough because I mean, there's a lot of cryptids, and we're talking about mystery animals that people report seeing, but which we have no physical evidence for. And in this case, thylacine, I think, qualifies because we believe it's extinct. So if it were surviving, it wouldn't be paranormal, but it would be really cool. It would be great.
Absolutely,
and you're right.
Yeah.
Bringing them back from extinction would be also, I think, really impressive and cool. For myself, not a specific cryptid, but I think the ocean still has big animals that we've never seen before to be found. I love
Loch Ness Monster.
Well, I wish there were something like a plesiosaur, which we now know is a Mesozoic marine reptile, not a dinosaur. So yeah, I love that idea, but I just suspect there's some interesting fish or unusual eels or other kinds of strange creatures out there that we haven't seen yet. I don't think that means that the sea serpent reports are actually X, Y, or Z. I think that would be. I just suspect the ocean's really big, and there's probably other mysteries to be found.
Yeah.
That being said, not a question that was asked, but if I could like pick one that I wish were real, you know, it'd be really cool if a lot of there's ones I don't want to be real. Like I wouldn't want mermaids to be real because that would be like it would really mess up. It would mess things up, right?
Yeah.
But I would love Bigfoot to be real, or any of the giant sort of ape creatures, because I'd love for there to be another extant relative in the hominid grouping that we could look at for maybe learn something from. But sadly, we all know now that COVID-19 has wiped out Bigfoot. Sorry.
Has anyone ever actually said that?
I just said it.
About that. Yeah. It sounds like the kind of thing that might be out there.
You know what? It's the internet. So not only has someone said that, but there's already porn about it. That's the internet.
Probably, yeah, romance novels about it. So there was a sort of related questions from Matthew Gordon, and we've only got about 9 minutes to go, so we're getting through these rather slowly.
Okay, looking around. Okay.
Yeah. Have you ever done an investigation of a local cryptid?
That's a really good question. Alta Maha, I think it's like I always call it Alti. Georgia has a lake monster called Alti. I've done some investigation, but not on site. And there are some local legends I've done investigations on, but were not cryptid related. So ghost lore. The Kennesaw House in Marietta, Georgia. There's a not famous, but locally famous ghost story about that involves a mysterious occurrence in the basement. But much like that pizza place in Pizzagate, there's no basement in the Kennesaw House. So it turns out that story is just a crock. And there's a cemetery with a little statue that's supposed to come alive if you go in and ask it questions at midnight. That turned out to not be true. So there's. Yeah. So local mysteries, but no local cryptids. So.
Yeah. Oh well, for me, I have done a few. Talking about the thylacine, there are a lot of sightings of the thylacine in sort of far north Queensland, kind of from further north than Brisbane, and I have relatives living there. And so there've been a lot of sightings of what's called the Beast of Butterham. And so that's a suburb that's in the Sunshine Coast. And so a lot of apparent sightings of the thylacine around there. So I went and visited a number of the sites where the thylacine's allegedly been seen. And there were just a few observations I had that I thought were interesting. One was that these were beautiful kind of rainforest areas and lots of tourists, people walking around with dogs. And so I think that you could see a stripy dog from a distance and possibly mistaken that for being a thylacine. And we also saw a lot of reeds in kind of water areas, so tall grasses and reeds that have this interesting kind of appearance to them that almost looks like some of the markings that you see on a thylacine.
Has there been any local legislation efforts towards changing the creature's name to Thylanolongersine?
Yeah. You're going to have to take issue with them for that, I think. But I just thought that those were two interesting little things that people could be misconstruing them for. But certainly that area is a hotspot for thylacine sightings. And there was another investigation that I did around here, a cryptid one years ago, and wrote a few articles about for a creature called Frog Boy.
Yeah.
And Frog Boy, kind of hybrid creature, part frog, part boy, and had been seen in a lake in the Loveland area.
It's a good name. It's a good name.
Yeah. a lot of effort went into coming up with that name. But there'd been lots of sightings, but the sightings seemed to date back maybe 20, 30 years, even more. I remember speaking with a woman I used to see in a coffee shop around here, and asking her, have you ever heard of the story or the legends of Frog Boy? And she said, oh yeah, that guy that's painted green that runs around here at night. And no, not that Frog Boy, but yeah, that was another story for another time, obviously. But it seems to me, and I haven't looked at the work I've done for quite some time, but it seems like a lot of the legends were probably transplanted here to Loveland, Colorado, from the Loveland frog sightings
I
in
wonder about
Ohio.
that. Yeah. I wonder if it was somebody local saw the Loveland Frog, Ohio story and said, just thought it was local.
Loveland, Colorado.
Yeah.
But
So,
there hadn't been sightings for quite some time. But yeah, I think that it was probably just a legend that had been transported out here.
it could be. So I'm going to
A few more questions.
Yeah, we've got time for more. Let's see. Can we give more examples of potential scriptids? Garrett Sessions asks, can you give us more examples of potential scriptids? I am working on that. So actually, I'm trying to compile a list because I think it would be a fun infographic. So stand by. We'll get back to that.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Someone else has asked, no name here. How do you decide what cases you want to investigate?
I don't know how you do it, but I get like a weekly call from the Illuminati. They just tell me what to do.
They call you too?
Yeah. Is that not how is that what they do? So anyway, I'm just saying. All right. So who knows? It's weird, the things that like catch your imagination and make you start digging in. I mean, when we started the show, I think a lot of our cases we were characterizing as stuff that scared the shit out of us when we were kids. And that's never really stopped. I still, in fact, more on this later, but I just found more information on an important case or important to me that I've done a lot of work on. So I got to get that written up. But
yeah, we should do it.
Big breakthrough
on that.
Yeah. So.
Well, I think, for me, it's certainly things I was interested in as a child. Like growing up in Sydney, it's in many ways a relatively new place for European settlement. And I mean, there are a lot of stories that go back to, the time when it was a penal colony, or might even go back to Indigenous stories, things like that. But it's a pretty new place in some ways as far as European settlement. So, you watch TV and you hear about stories and you read books and you think one day I'm going to travel to Coral Castle and I'm going to see that place in Florida. And one day I'm going to go to the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose and see that place I saw on Ripley's Believe It or Not. So excuse me.
So cool.
I think part of it is just that kind of wanderlust from childhood, but I think part of it too is, I mean, I get a lot of requests for things over the years. I've had people say, can you do an investigation into this? Can you look into this cult or this religious group? And certainly I think I look into any legends wherever I'm living at the time too. It just makes me think of Lubbock when we were there last year at Texas Tech, going to the conference that they had. And when you asked about local legends,
yeah, I do. That the local legends were a little disappointing, honestly. I really wanted to find something more exciting, but they did that. We did go look at a few things.
Well, but I was still thinking about what was said to you when you first asked about legends.
Oh no, I'm forgotten already. I'm sorry. So what did you? Can you remind me, because my memory's terrible.
I can't remember who you asked, but you asked someone and you said, are there any local legends in Lubbock?
Oh no! And they said Buddy Holly.
Buddy Holly.
That's right.
That was a beautiful secular answer. Now
it really was. Are there any local legends? Well, Buddy Holly.
Buddy Holly. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think
really
normally
funny.
if I'm traveling somewhere for work or just happen to be going somewhere on holiday, I think I always look into local legends and stories and try to check those out. So I think that's always an inspiration for investigations.
We had in the chat, someone said a gray. There's a gray Facebook question. I don't know what that is though. I wanted to answer if we could, but I don't know what that is. Oh, I'm apologizing. Sorry. So I don't know what that specific question was. I guess we're almost out of time. We have like a minute left, so I guess we should wind up. We didn't get to everything, but we'll get to more of these later. We've got lots of time in the future, hopefully. Well,
I think these are fun to do because normally we're interviewing someone else. So to kind of have the microphone turned to us is fun.
Well, we've got we could go ahead and plug what we're doing next week.
Yes, we're going to be speaking with Brian Brushwood
Yes.
next Sunday.
Yes.
So yeah, shock
Should.
magician and what TV star of gosh, well he's done a number of TV shows. I think Life Hacks or something.
Yeah,
And
and he does his own internet series about how to trick people. Scam School, I think.
Scam School, I love that one.
Yeah.
And certainly talking about going and doing talks to university students.
That's how I met him first.
Kids.
He came and talked to KSU over here, So my
well,
first.
yeah, he hammers nails into his head and it does all kinds of shock magic and
blockhead, shock magic, escape artist, all this and much more.
Yeah, so he's a lot of fun, and he kind of owed this as a favor to you, but I guess we can get into that next week.
He owes me a favor, so that's good. All right,
that's going to be fun.
All right. Well, again, I will wind up now. I want to say thank you again for watching us. Please subscribe to our channel. We really need the subscribers.
And like our episodes and share them and make comments but certainly thanks for joining us today. We've got people from all around the world joining us. It's really cool.
It is. It's fantastic. Thank you so much. And have a great night.